Welcome back to another episode of Student of the Game. We have got a good one for you today. I like to do these solo episodes right after a guest, and our last episode was with Coach Kenton Aubrey. Coach, talking about March Madness. The theme of it was survive in advance. Survive in advance. That's what March Madness is all about. It's about these schools that you just got to win and get to the next game. There's overcoming obstacles and hurdles and injury and, chemistry in a team. We're going to talk about survive in advance today as it relates to the National Association of Realtors. This is a special episode. Yeah, I'm going to talk about real estate. Let's talk about what you may or may not have seen in the headlines. And I want to address this from a practical, factual, experiential point of view today. So recently in the news, remember, this is survive in advance. So this message is to all of our clients out there, people that want to buy a home, people want to sell a home. This may even speak to some of the realtors that are out there, but survive in advance is the key. The lawsuit regarding the National Association of Realtors. Let's talk about that. The attorneys want more negotiation. They want they want more transparency in the real estate business. And frankly, us realtors, we have to be better. And that's what it's going to call for. So let me break this down a little bit. Remember, in our podcast, we want you to master the fundamentals. We want you to fall in love with practice, and we want you to win at the game of life. We're going to do that today. So let's talk about this lawsuit and exactly what it is, and hopefully we can answer some questions for you, the listener. The lawsuit against the National Association of Realtors and several major real estate companies revolved around allegations that these entities engaged in practices that artificially inflated the commissions paid to real estate agents. The core of the plaintiff's argument centered on NAR's adoption and implementation of a rule that requires all brokers to make a blanket non-negotiable offer to buyer broker compensation when listing a property on the MLS. So what does this mean to me? It means that the lawyers think that there's collusion in the real estate industry, and there needs to be more transparency. All right, let's dive into this. So let's talk about the lawsuit. What is fundamental about this lawsuit? So here's the fundamentals. There's a lot of things going on in the media right now. Matter of fact, let me read you a couple of headlines. CNN headline: the NAR settlement could slash home prices for Americans. NBC News: the proposed settlement could mean the end of the 6% commission. That's actually illegal to talk about what the standard is in our industry. So realtors have not been doing this, but that's a headline. And then Business Journal: NAR settlement over commissions will transform home buying. Has that scared you yet? Do you want to buy a home? Do you want to sell a home? Are you a realtor? Are you a business owner thinking about how certain regulations affect your business? Well, let's talk about the fundamentals, because that's what we do. We master the fundamentals. So let's talk about the fundamentals of real estate, by the way. And before I get on that, let's talk about the National Association of Realtors. So I'm going to talk out of both sides of my mouth, and I need you to hear me say this clear. I'm a big fan of NAR. NAR, the National Association of Realtors, is the largest trade organization in the world. Obviously, that's why they came after us. Think about this. There is no National Association of Homeowners. Home ownership is nothing without the National Association of Realtors. We have the largest lobbying group in the country, where we fight for tax incentives, we fight for home ownership, we fight for regulatory guidelines that help people own the American dream. I don't know one person that doesn't wish that they owned more real estate based on where the market's at today. So NAR, the National Association of Realtors, advocates for home ownership in America. And they do this with lobbyists fighting to put as much money back in your pocket as possible and to create benefits and opportunities for home ownership. What's fundamental about owning a home? What's fundamental about real estate? What's fundamental about a real estate transaction? Here are the fundamentals. The fundamentals of real estate is a seller is looking for a buyer, and a buyer is looking for a home. That's fundamental. That'll never change. No matter what happens, the lawsuits, new regulations, new ways that we conduct our business, that is fundamental. A seller is looking for a buyer is looking for a home. And if you believe in the free market will help sift through how that process works. What's fundamental about the lawsuit? let's talk about this. So, all of those headlines, and it comes back to this. What's fundamental about this lawsuit from NAR is compensation offers moved off of the MLS. All right, just so you know how this works, the lawsuit states that the National Association of Realtors and all MLSs will remove any offers of compensation. When we're working with a buyer or we're working with a seller, we look at those as separate transactions. We get compensated, and that is now being removed from the MLS. That's the main thing. NAR has agreed to put in place a new rule prohibiting offers of compensation on, keyword, on the MLS. Offers of compensation could continue to be an option consumers can pursue off the MLS through negotiation and consultation with real estate professionals. And sellers can offer buyer concessions on the MLS. For example, still paying your closing costs. Let's back up. When we sit down with a seller, we talk about what our fee for service is, and then we also talk about what would you like to compensate a buyer. We're in America. Money solves problems. We're in America. Incentive pay works. If you have a job and you get a bonus, there's probably an incentive for you to get that bonus. How did your company do last quarter? How did your company do last year? If your company did well, there's incentives. You might get a bonus. If your company didn't do well, you're not going to get a bonus. If I'm a seller, I want to offer incentives for somebody to come buy my house. You think about that. I think it's common sense. Hopefully, this is an unbiased opinion. The more you compensate or incentivize somebody, the more showings you get. Matter of fact, 50, 60 years ago, the way it used to work when my grandfather was slanging homes back in the day in the 1950s and 60s, the way it worked was you listed a property and somebody walked into your office and they bought one of your listings. If you didn't have a listing, they had to go down to the next office. When cooperation came about, what ended up happening is buyers had more options. Realtors had more options. Sellers had more showings on their property, which drove prices up. In a cooperative environment, we believe everybody won. So the first thing that needs to happen with this lawsuit is compensation offers are moved off the MLS. So now realtors are just going to have to check in with each other. We're going to have to be better at communicating. We're going to have to understand what's the compensation, every house that we go to. How much is the seller willing to compensate a buyer broker to bring a buyer to get an accepted offer on their home and to get it to closing as best as possible? The second thing that's going to happen is written agreements for MLS participants acting for buyers. So in the state of Indiana, this is called a buyer exclusive agency contract or a buyer representative agreement. And in these buyer agency agreements, it is going to be disclosed to buyers what our fee for service is. What are we charging? What is our fee? What value is the buyer getting? What's the consumer getting, right? This is right now is like the rubber meets the road, price versus value. What's the price? What's the value? This needs to be communicated. Now, let me stop right here. Before we go any further on this buyer agency agreement, I will say the real estate community has done a poor job of communicating how buyer agency works, how buyer agent compensation works. For the longest time, average to subpar realtors, not pointing any fingers, ones that had a hard time communicating their value, they would make this statement, and this is why we're in the position we're in, is they would say, it's free to work with me. The seller pays the fee. You don't have to pay anything. It's free to work with me. Well, it's technically not free. There is a cost associated in the transaction. And so this new law, this new spot in this lawsuit says, in the settlement says, written agreements for MLS participants acting for buyers. While NAR has been advocating for the use of written agreements for years, in this settlement, we have agreed to require MLS participants working with buyers to enter into a written representation agreement with their buyers. This change will go into effect in the state of Indiana July 1st. Think about that. Think about that as a consumer. Home comes on the market, you want to go see it. Most realtors just go. One of the things we do at Noll Team Real Estate is we sit down and have a consultation with a buyer. We go over part of our process is we educate them. We talk about their finances. We become a financial advisor. We talk about becoming a counselor. One thing I know is people move because of lifestyle. They don't move because of interest rates. They don't move because of the weather. Well, sometimes they do. But the reality is they move because of lifestyle, death, divorce, marriage, got your first job, relocation, parents pass away, and the kids need to sell the house, downsizing, empty nesting, having more kids, upsizing. These are the reasons people move. It's because of lifestyle. What we need to do now as successful buyer's agents is have our buyers sign this buyer exclusive agency contract that talks about the fee we're getting and what we're going to do to represent them. Did you know that inside the purchase agreement, there's somewhere between 3 to 5% of the entire sale price just inside the purchase agreement? There's 496 lines and 92 checkboxes. Your representative, your person that you want to hire to represent you to buy a home better know where all those checkboxes are. They better know how to put those in favor of you, the buyer, when you're negotiating a deal. 3 to 5%, think about that. And so these buyer agreements talk about what fee this particular realtor, and by the way, all these fees are negotiable. They always have been. If you are negotiating with the realtor what their fee is and you don't like their fee, you have tons of choices. And this has been around for 20 years that I've been doing this. There's flat fee brokers. They'll just put your home in the MLS. You charge them a flat fee. They'll put your home in the MLS. There's 5%, 6%, 7%. There is no standards. There are actually arbitration on realtors that talk about this is standard in our industry. Now, I can have a standard. That doesn't mean not everybody gets to work with me. That doesn't mean that we don't negotiate those fees. What that means is there are no standards in the industry, but that's what the headlines say. So, as we unpack this a little more, as we walk through the fundamentals of the lawsuit is the compensation offers are to be moved off the MLS. That's all it's saying. And buyer written agreements are now enacted for every buyer. So you want to buy a home, you're going to sign an agreement, you're going to say, I got to pick a realtor. Now, these realtors, they better add some value. They better add some value. They better explain their value. They better represent you. They better articulate. They better negotiate for you. There are thousands of dollars at stake here, hundreds of thousands of dollars, sometimes millions of dollars at stake for what we do every day. Falling in love with practice. I absolutely love what we do. My team has over 60 years combined experience. I've been doing this for 20 years. I can tell you one thing, relationships win. We've been spending 20 years building relationships. Character and competence is the only reason people choose to work with us. Character, can I trust you? Competence, are you good at what you do? These questions I believe consumers should have with their realtors, with their providers, with their service professionals, no matter what industry. Can I trust you and are you good at what you do? I think this is great for realtors. I can tell you what, I knew I needed to do this episode about surviving and advancing and what these lawsuits mean when my mom reached out to me and she goes, hey, everything gonna be okay? I heard you guys are getting sued. We're not actually. That's part of the settlement. Not going to go into details on that. Feel free to reach out to us if you have questions. But I can tell you what my mom thinks I do. My mom thinks I look at houses online, find something that's affordable for a buyer, and then we sign some papers. It's probably what my mom thinks I do. I'm just kidding. Just kidding. Love you, Mom. But the reality is our team, okay, and then this is a plug for our team. The mission at Noll Team Real Estate is to eradicate mediocre real estate transactions. When you're making your largest purchase ever, we do not want this to be anything close or near to average. We want your outcomes to exceed your expectations. The goal in doing this is to help you save time, to reduce your stress, and to help you keep as much money in your pocket as possible. And that is our life's work. We're here to serve others. It's our number one core value. We have a fiduciary responsibility to make sure we're acting on your best interest, that we treat your money like it's our own. And we're serious about that. We train on that. As we wrap up this episode, survive and advance. Have you ever gone on a trip and whatever you choose to use, Apple Maps, Google Maps, Waze, whatever, and you're going from point A to point B? It gives you multiple options, doesn't it? And most of the time, there's not much time in between one route or the other. Might be 3 minutes quicker, might be 10 minutes quicker, but you're still going from A to B. For us, going from A to B in this industry is a seller is looking for a buyer and a buyer is looking for a home. And when The national media, who doesn't have, I'm going to stop right there. When the national media is wrong, absolutely wrong about the headlines, the clickbait, you know how the media works. When they're wrong about this, what you, the listener, need to understand is that the competency that we have to dig into what this lawsuit's all about, it's about two little changes. Compensation is not to be offered on the MLS, and every buyer needs to sign a buyer broker representation agreement so that they understand how we get paid, so they understand what they're getting in value. We absolutely love what we do. Matter of fact, we're going to keep increasing on the services we provide. We're going to keep increasing the value. We're going to double down on the value that our buyers and our sellers get. And we're not going to stop, no matter what happens in the media. Hopefully we've answered some of your questions today. Hopefully we've spoke out on what the national news is saying. But let me tell you what winning at the game of life looks like for us. After 20 years and doing almost 2,000 transactions, we've been introduced to almost 3,800 families who want to buy or sell a home. We've connected 20,000 times. We've written 14,000 personal notes because we believe relationships win. And no matter what the market's doing, no matter what you're going through in your day, no matter what's happening in the news, in politics, or whatever industry you're a part of, we believe that when it all shakes out, relationships win. When you hire Noll Team Real Estate to represent you in the largest sale or purchase in a financial transaction, you can count on us to deliver the service that you expect. This is just one more opportunity for our team to distinguish the difference between price and value, to distinguish the difference between a pro and an amateur. I've said on the podcast before, amateurs get paid to play, but professionals get paid to practice. And you can be sure that Noll Team Real Estate is going to double down on one of our core values of growing constantly. This has been a fun episode because I actually get to talk about the thing that I love to do every single day. That's to help people buy and sell homes. When somebody's going through a lifestyle transition and they need to make a move, we would ask you, please introduce us to those friends and family who are going through that lifestyle change that need to talk at a kitchen table or a living room, that there's some type of housing change that's involved. Thank you for your time. Relationships win.